Well, good evening, everyone. It's great to see all of you here. I'm Sally Yurkovich. I'm the Director of Educational Exchange and Special Projects, which means at the American Scandinavian Foundation, which means I oversee all the fellowships and grants and do special things like curating the Nordic Echoes exhibition upstairs. And I hope if you haven't seen it yet, you'll take some time to go see the exhibition. And we have a whole series of programs that we have planned to sort of expand upon the topics in the exhibition. There are flyers or rack cards here and downstairs. So again, please take them. We have some wonderful workshops coming up and some discussions about textiles and working in metal, some music performances, all from the upper Midwest. So it would be great if you could come again to see these things. Tonight we have a very special program. It's the first actually in our program series after the opening of the exhibition with Harald Gaski and Tia Keobounpheng. Harald is a professor of Sámi Literature at the Sámi University in Norway. He is an author, editor, translator, and voice for Sámi literature and culture in Norway and among indigenous peoples worldwide. His work focuses on Sámi aesthetics, worldview and values, and the transition from oral to written literature. We're honored to have him with us this evening, and we're glad that we could capture him on his way to the Midwest. Tia, whose work is in the exhibition upstairs, is one of the 24 artists whose work is featured in Nordic Echoes, our current exhibit, which explains how Nordic traditions are being shaped to contemporary expressions in the upper Midwest. Tia is, as you'll hear, is of Finnish and Sámi descent, and she's currently living in Minneapolis. Her work has been featured in a number of exhibitions in the upper Midwest as well as nationally. And again, if you haven't seen her work in Nordic Echoes, I hope that you'll have a chance to see it. It's really fantastic. So Tia and Harald are going to make short presentations and then have a conversation and then open the floor for questions. So take it away.
Okay, thank you, Sally. I'm going to just take a moment to say that I am a human being, and anything I say tonight is the truth as I know it today, and I reserve the right to be wrong in the future. So my work, my current work, is a practice that attempts to include everything that I know, to not specialize, to acknowledge who and where I come from. That means my family, my parents, the places that I've lived, but also the ancestors who came before me. And there's so many ways that I could talk about my practice, but Harald has presented this beautiful context of to hear and to listen and to act accordingly. And my practice really is about that, surprisingly, to me. I have a creative background, but I came to my current work kind of accidentally or through a series of questions or problems or opportunities presenting themselves to me, and me recognizing that as an opportunity to step forward. I'm going to start by saying that I grew up knowing my Finnish heritage. It was a strong part of our identity as a family, and I lived in Finland. Let's see, let's go back. This is a map of Finland, Sweden, and Norway, and the colored portions are loosely the area of Sápmi. I did not hear the oral story through my mother that my grandfather used to tell until 2021. He told a story that suggested to me at that time, I was able to hear that it suggested that there was Sámi lineage in my great-great-grandmother's line. And so that was a point that coincided with other inquiries into maternal ancestral lines, and Wilhelmina was the woman who I started to follow. And so in 2022, this is a map of the journey that I took from Finland. Oulu is the town that I lived in when I was 18 as an exchange student. So my connection to Finland was one of heritage, but one of living connection that I made as a young adult. And so that was 30 years ago that I lived there and was connected to living relatives, to the language and the culture. So I felt that I knew this place, but this journey in 2022 was really about going to the parts and the places of this land that I thought I didn't know, but moving through them felt like going home in a way that I hadn't expected. So these are the places. To give you, to break the suspense, Wilhelmina did come from a Sámi family, and our ancestral village is Vetasjavri in northern Sweden. So I share this because this was a sculpture that I made before encountering geometry and what the work that I'm doing now. This is called Full Circle, and I made it when I was 40. And if you look up the words full circle or the concept in the dictionary, it states that full circle is to come back to the original position or the opposite of the original position. And so at 20, I wanted to be an artist. It was a fire burning inside me, and I didn't know how to be that artist. And at 40, I came back to that original position, and it turned out to be the opposite of the original position. And since then, I have been following something that is very powerful. It started as a sense of grief and a void that I associated with not knowing my grandmothers, because both of them died around the time I was born. And so that was the start, and it unveiled and all of these really important ways. And so there's all of these aspects that feed into my practice, and there are things that I'm doing in the work that can be looked at through a cultural lens or a personal lens or an artistic lens, or through fiber, even within the art component. But the overarching theme is learning how to hold complexity and learning how to hold multiple things, which is essentially a dismantling of a black and white view, a very binary way of learning and thinking and seeing the world. And so in 2021, during the pandemic, I was attending 4th grade geometry with my son, and the first lesson I attended was a geometry lesson where the teacher started by saying geo means earth, and geometry is just measuring the earth. And the exercise then was to create 2 interlocking triangles by first laying out a bed of circles, a foundation of circles. And we're actually going to do that exercise on Saturday if there's still room in the workshop. But the act of laying this foundation of circles was profound, because it told me, and I have the right words for it now, is that underneath the rigid laws and the boxes that I felt I needed to fit into, there was an interconnected circular consciousness that was always there, and I just didn't know it. And so that became very symbolic. This is where that geometry lesson took me. Geometry has become a language, a visual language for me to speak to complexity, to speak to the way that multiple things can exist and emerge from the same place. So this is the Thread series. All of these pieces start with the exact same circular foundation of interconnected and concentric circles. This is a system that I have developed. It's not really accepted as a traditional or official fiber technique, but I'm essentially removing the weft in weaving, right? So I come from a weaving background, and I've started to think about my learned behaviors as the weft, which is normally what is woven over and under the warp. And I'm instead building these warp fields that I think of the warp as the threads of time and lineage that shaped my behaviors and understanding. So by removing myself, I am searching for lost wisdom and meaning from those that came before me. And so then this is the same foundation, much larger. The piece on the right is upstairs in the exhibition, and the piece on the left is my own meditation on learning to feel and sensing that my ancestors are surrounding me. Here's a detail of the thread, and what happens is it requires viewers to move around the work, change their positions to see a different perspective, and you literally see different things in the work. So another series that I work in is called Who Do You Think You Are? And these feature black and white capsule shapes that are abstract portraits of people and relationships. So this is a portrait of me and my parents. It's also a meditation on genealogy lines and what it means to be a full, vibrant life when you are researching one line after the other. So it's an acknowledging myself as a through line, a middle generation. So it's my parents, but it's also me and my kids. This is a portrait of me and my husband and our 2 kids. And so these are really about the energy that's created. The portrait that's upstairs is, there are 7 capsules. I don't have a picture of it here. You'll have to go upstairs to see it. But it's a meditation on my family of origin and the way in which individuals need to give something of their self for the culture of large families or families in general. The one suspended in the gallery is a portrait of me and my husband. My husband was born in Laos. He was almost 9 when they came to Minneapolis as refugees. And so for the past 25 years, I have lived in a multicultural household, and one that has informed me. You know, he's a first generation immigrant, and so a lot of what I see him and his family experiencing feels like an echo of what my great-grandparents may have experienced when they came here. And so the role and the power of assimilation is really, really felt through a relationship with him as well. This is another portrait of my aunt who recently passed. Foundation series is only pencil and colored pencil, and this really honors the things that get covered up or the things that go unsaid. Sometimes they're concealed and hidden. This is a detail of a large commission that I just completed. So you can see the pencil. This is all done by hand. This is a foundation number 8. It's a 2-story commission piece, 10 feet wide by 20 feet tall, comprised of 8 5-foot by 5-foot panels. And then the Circle Round series, you can see here, uses a radial stitch pattern. So all of the other stitching is vertical without the weft. This is radial, so it is the ultimate adoption and acceptance of the circle. And I came back to this one, which I started with. This is the most recent. This is Circle Round number 8, and this is the map of my genealogy. So every ring is a generation, every color is a person whose name, at the very least, I know. And several of them, of these places, I've been to their birthplaces, I've been to the villages where they grew up, etc. And then it brings me to Wayfind, which is the film that's upstairs in the exhibition. It was a film that I intentionally made while I was on my journey in 2022. You can see me walking in circles on the earth. The place is the birthplace of Wilhelmina, It's on the northern coast of Norway in a village called Skjækan in the Kvanjangen fjord. And the dress is a dress that I made specifically for the film to wear when I was there. There's 16 circles all around the hem, which is the generation that Wilhelmina is from in relationship to me. So each of us has 16 great-great-grandparents, and she's in that generation. And then the orange sticks are the wayfinding markers that line the roads in Norway, and so there's 16 of those as well. And ultimately that is an expression that the circle is my guide, and that's my cue to Harald.
All right. Yeah, so I need to stand, but I also in order to see the screen there. So it'll soon be up. And let's continue circling around the circle then, because my first slide is actually the Sámi flag, which also has a circle in it, representing both the sun and the moon. And the other colors of the Sámi flag are the colors you find on the Sámi gakti, the Sámi outfit. I have a light version on me now, which is mainly blue, but so this is a Sámi flag. It should be a bit stretched out in that, and so, but anyway, the circle is the main part here, and also the colors. But so, no, you've already seen the map over the Sámi area where the Sámi live, crossing the borders between Norway, Sweden, Finland, and also Russia. The Sámi area here on this map covers the whole of Kola Peninsula, and the Sámi actually lived more or less all over the area previously, but nowadays we do have very little contact with them because of Putin closing the borders. But this map shows you the Sámi dialects, or the Sámi different languages, because actually linguistically you can speak about 10 different Sámi languages, because the closest one to each other, they are mutually understandable. But if you look at, for example, the southern Sámi, the red one, and the light blue one, the North Sámi area, the distance between those two languages is almost comparable to the difference between Norwegian and Icelandic, or English and German. So actually it's possible to speak about different languages. But the reason that a lot of us speak about different dialects, there is more cultural, political, that because it is the same people, we have the same history, the same culture, so there are other reasons for the languages being that far from each other. And then the Sámi, we assume that the Sámi area was split into a lot of sidas. I'll explain the sida immediately, but you see every sida needed to have some water, either a lake or a river running through it. So and then the Sámi area was split between lots of sidas, which then is a clan or a working unit of a tribe, and it was consensus-based in decision-making, co-managed as the organizational construct, co-responsibility regarding resource management, and applying its own rules. So actually an example of self-determination of the Sámi already back then. And then everything based on the respect for land. So and also remembering to thanking the earth for the gifts that the earth gives. This slide has followed me for the last 20 years or something like that, because, and this is also language philosophy behind this, and people like Wittgenstein would have loved the third one, but I've left that out. Because Gela, as you can see, means not only Sámi language, but language, but at the same time also a snare, a trap for catching like birds or whatever you catch in a snare. And then to learn a language is Ohpa Gela. So you... and that's where Wittgenstein gets in, that because there's a connection between the theory and the theoretical and the practical part of your life. So if you're going to get anything into the snare or trap anything, you need to know how to do that, how to build the trap in a correct way. So this wahpat means to learn. So you actually need to know what you are doing. So to learn a language is almost as easy or problematic as to check the trap for the catch. And this, the Sámi poet Paulus Utsi also used this as the title for the two collections of poetry that he published. Gela Gela, the first one, that was an inspiration for the Sámi to learn Sámi and to use Sámi also in the traditional way as something that you can play with. So actually trap the language into language. And then the other one, Gela Gela, and trap with language, but also the danger of being trapped by language. So you need to really know the language you are speaking, but as for the Sámi being a minority, Paulus pointed out that it's also very important to learn and be really knowledgeable in the majority language. Otherwise, you can be trapped by the authorities, as the Sámi have experienced quite a lot. But then to Gullat and tonight's topic, because then that means then to hear something with your ears, but also to belong to some place or a person, a spouse, a partner, whatever. And then the connection between Gullat, to hear, and Guldalit, to listen. They have the same stem, both of them. So you are listening to the, well, we'll get into that, listening to the earth, but of course also listening to your spouse. And in some occasions you'll also heed or obey what the spouse or partner says. But so there's something Socratic again behind this, that when knowing what is right, then you have to do the right thing as well. Well, we'll leave that obey thing. But anyway, the interesting thing here is that here Norwegian and Sámi actually correspond concerning to belong to a place, while English have this longing, that you are longing to the place you are from or whatever. Because this listening also has to do with the old Sámi story or a myth about the creator when he or she created what were to become the Sámi people. The creator knew about the hardships that the people would meet. So in order to give Sámi some solace or belief in the future, he or she put a living and beating heart of a 2-year-old reindeer cow, which is a vuonjale in South Sámi, vuonjal in North Sámi, at the center of the earth. So the people, every time they were afraid of the future or losing faith in the future, we could just lay our ear to the ground and listen for the heartbeats from below. And as long as you could hear the heartbeats beat, then you knew that there would be a future for the people. And that connects then the listening thing, the Guldalit thing, into listening to the listening for the heartbeat and listening to the earth, and then obeying that message that the earth and nature gives you. So, which is actually one of the crucial things with indigenous peoples, that we are here to take care of Mother Earth. Which is a hard thing to do nowadays, but anyway, that's a mission of the indigenous peoples. And you see also the likeness, similarity between the concepts for Eana, Eatni, and Eanu, earth, mother, and river. So the earth is the mother, our mother, and Eanu is then like the veins where our blood runs. So it's the life-giving water. And Nils-Aslak Valkeapää, one of our great classical poets, used that also as a title for one of his books. The prize-winning book is The Sun, My Father, but this is the female counterpart to the book, which means The Earth, My Mother. The spelling is a bit different because that's this close, intimate relationship you feel to someone, then you use more like a childish language to express that. So it would be Etni, Etnachan in correct spelling, but this is then the endearing, close relationship to land. And then this ability to read, because in an indigenous setting, that actually means that you are able to track, you receive and respect guidance and instructions from the environment, from the earth, and we have lots of concepts for that, like Bagalit, Vaivadit, Valtahallat, and Guldalit. So we read nature, we read images, and of course people, like all people do, but also signs like weather and that messages that birds and animals especially come and give you or warns you or whatever, but at least that animals and birds are really important messengers for the Sami. So that actually means that we read both words, sounds, and images. And it all then comes down to respecting the world, the earth, and listening to the earth. So like Nils-Aslak Valkeapää says in one of his early poems that Gulako ellimo jenai, joa shavamis, piakko possumis, ta lievisot majaikon tatjat, ta lievisot. Thank you.
Harald, can you put that last slide back up?
Yes.
Okay, we're supposed to have a conversation now. But I'm just thinking about the blowing of the wind and the way in which the language and the meanings are moving all the time, it seems. They have more than one meaning or double meaning or really many meanings. Can you speak a little bit more to that? For me?
Yeah, yeah. Yes, the Sami actually is a very interesting language in that sense, because either we have very specific terminology, like for the snow, more than 300 words for that. I don't know how many hundred words there are for different kinds of reindeer, and the same with salmon. So important things in traditional Sami life had really a developed scientific language for that. But then you have the other side when you have this ambiguity, like the Gela and several other things, that where you only have two two meanings that are related to each other, but not that closely related. So it takes a lot of philosophizing about it, seeing the connection. And then the third one, where we also have this the circumlocutions, or the metaphoric languages for, like, the wolf, the bear, and the wolverine. Those the animals that eat and steal reindeer, sheep, and so on. So, and the Sami, obviously, because of the close relationship to nature, the idea was that nature and animals belonging to nature would understand Sami when Sami spoke. So they knew that the difference between the animal mind and the human mind was that animals wouldn't understand metaphors. So if you didn't speak about the wolf, that now I'm going to kill that wolf which has taken so many reindeer, but call the wolf something else, there are several terms for that: Stalipi, Ruemis, and several others. Then the wolf wouldn't understand that it was we were speaking about him or her. So this all makes makes a really intricate system of language where you are. And I think that's also one of the reasons that Sami has become such a wonderful instrument for poetry, because it became a game for the Sami to develop language in that sense.
So I am learning things through my practice that I don't always understand what they mean or what they're teaching me, but when you speak about language in this way, I feel like I'm learning those lessons just in a very removed sense. So for people who are here, I'm an American. I was born here. I am reconnecting to ancestry. And to ancestors, and I have been very motivated to learn and to feel connected and to be connected to the land. But I was not raised with heritage, right? Like I'm pretty clear about, speaking of language, I speak of my Sámi lineage, and I speak of my Finnish heritage because I knew the Finnish culture growing up, and I'm learning, not separately, I'm learning to understand how some of the things that I thought were Finnish are actually Sámi, or might be, because the way I understand it is that there was like a hiding or a concealing because of very practical and survival reasons. But what I'm hearing you talk about is that same mode of protection and safety that I have forgotten, essentially, right? Like through those modes of safety and protection, I have been disconnected, in my mind at least, from the knowledge of the culture. It sounds like it's embedded in the culture, the playfulness and the ability to move and flex and be creative and speak creatively and be smart is just not only about surviving, but it's about the thriving of the culture.
Yeah, but the artwork you showed here previously is actually a proof of that it must be embedded in you without yourself knowing it, because what you actually are practicing is that specific part of Sami, where the scientific language in the way you express your family relationships and where you are in that positioned in that the bigger picture. So So in a way, because I was actually sitting here thinking while you were showing the slides that, well, this is I don't know what kind of science we would call that, but anyway, it is advanced theorizing about your background, your belongings. So I was really charmed by that because it's just another way of expressing it. So,
I mean, I think that as an artist, I can, I'm not a scientist. No. I'm not a historian. I'm not a theorist per se, right? I'm not an academic. But as an artist, I can pull from all of these things. I can pull from scientific research about epigenetics and understand how in my body, in my blood, in my cells, I can have a memory, right? And I don't always understand what I have an idea when I start, and I don't always understand the lessons, but every time after I've finished a piece, and usually I have to move away from it or take it out of my studio or see it photographed sometimes, like it needs to be removed, I start to then understand what the lesson is that it's teaching me. And it's never quite what I thought it was going to be. And one of the other things when you were talking about the Gullat and the Guldalit and the reindeer and the beating heart and the earth, and I feel like for me, as someone who's reconnecting, who doesn't know the culture because I wasn't raised with it, but also as someone who feels that I understand things in a way that I can't explain, I've had some thoughts about the fact that I am, I guess, listening to my body. With thinking about this, hearing, listening, and acting accordingly, I feel like I'm listening to my body as if it's a correlation to the earth, and that's like the first step of my ability to hear, and to quiet my brain and not lead with my brain. I don't know where I'm going with this, Harald, but that's what you made me think about.
Yeah, but it makes sense, because and it's also, in a way, a metaphoric story of the creation of Sámi art. Sámi art as art is from the late 1970s. We had artists before that, but that at that time, actually, the young artists who had taken art education as well, several of them moved together and created a collective where they theorized about what Sámi art is, and they created Sámi art, and they even bought a small bus they filled up with their own produced art, and just drove around the whole Sámi area and made up pop-up exhibits. Art exhibits, and that was something new for the Sámi to experience that. And these young ones, they were also seeking back to something, even though several of them had they knew Sámi, they had grown up as Sámi, but they never learned about their own history and background in school, and so they were trying to find their way back without actually going to the elders and ask, well, how is this and how is that? Because art, they wanted to be innovative and create something new. So in that search for identity, in the search for new ways of expressing Sáminess, they chose art. And I felt, because I've been following this for almost 100 years now, the development. But you see that among all the indigenous peoples, that the art and research actually walks more or less hand in hand in indigenous communities. It's not separated as it is in the West. And I think that has something to do with this holistic way of viewing that everything is connected. So you don't make those limits and definitions that this is art and this is not. So So they also had their own problems with, you know, this the crafts duetji tradition and the practitioners of duetji. They weren't happy with the new artists because they did duetji in the wrong way. The traditionalists said. So there was.
Well, it's funny you say that, Harald, because
Could you interrupt me?
I mean, for years I have, since I've started this work, and maybe I guess the sculpture work before, I have often talked about doing things wrong, like intentionally doing it wrong, especially with weaving. Like I am intentionally breaking it apart because, you know, oh man, I've thought a lot about this, but I'm trying to think of what to say first. The breaking apart of weaving conceptually into this method that I have speaks to a disconnection from tradition. You know, as a conceptual artist, I'm speaking to that. So I am not expressing traditional Sámi patterns. I'm not expressing traditional Finnish patterns. I am expressing an interventionist. Sally's friend taught me that one. An interventionist fiber method that isn't really a fiber method to speak to the sever from the knowing. But then there's also conversations I've had with my husband, who, like I said, is from Laos, where like this concept of art, like they understand the traditional arts much that in the same way that duoji is like a traditional, and there's a way to do it, and there's a reason why it's done in the way that it is, and it ties to history, and it's very important, you know, like their traditional work is important to preserve. And I think that when there is, like the further we move away from indigenous knowing or from our own indigenous connection to place, because everybody has its, you know, is indigenous to some place, the more disconnection we have, the more art is necessary in a way, because there's so much meaning that comes from traditional craft, from the duoji. It tells you who you are. It tells others who you are. And so when you are removed from it, the art in general creates meaning for us, and and that's, I think, what people respond to in art is someone's authentic expression of self, and it's like an identifying with that vulnerable human expression. I don't know, what do you got with that?
Yeah, that's. Well, I was thinking about the deconstructionists and in philosophy, and because that was an attempt within science to do something new and to really dismantle the system that had been so far, and well, several people will say that it didn't really work. And probably that's the difference between science and art. That you need, science still needs to be a bit more rigid, and you need the definitions. But sometimes you at least are able to stretch them a little bit. And while I'm so happy we have so wonderful Sámi artists who I think they are. Just adhering to the tradition, they bring the tradition forward in the sense that we say we belong to a nomadic culture, and the nomadic cultures have survived because they were adaptable and pragmatic. So they adjusted to the new situations, and that's in many ways, the artists have been the pathfinders and really showing the society in which direction to move, while the traditionalists say they oppose that, of course, because they say that was not the way we did it. But if we just did continue to do things in the old way, probably we wouldn't be here today. So
I've got one response to that, Sally. This reminds me of, through color, like when I work with color, I usually have a black and white pattern and then a colored pattern, right? I'm layering and embedding and channeling these different patterns through. And this was a while back, and maybe someday I'll get there, but I was trying to eliminate the black and white. You know, I think of the black and white as the rigid binary, and the colors are a more enlightened way of seeing, but it came to the point where the black and white was necessary with the color, because it's the spectrum, right? The white and the black are the extreme ends of a full spectrum. And so breaking the binary is not dismissing the binary. Breaking the binary is allowing the full spectrum of binaries. And I think that if you think about that conceptually in society, like that is a really, really powerful, empowering way to change one's view of the world, to, instead of either or, it's like what's in between. And are we really on this side or the other side, or are we both somewhere in the middle? And I think that's what I love about this practice, and the geometry and the colors. Like all of these parts are constantly teaching me how to look at the world differently, and to look at myself differently, and I'm constantly learning from it.
Yes. I don't need to add anything to that. I think, because that's a wonderful rounding up of the conversation, and I think then we just should open for questions and comments.
Do we need to have a microphone for them?
Just.
Well, there must be many folk tales, and what do people learn from them? Children learn from folk tales.
Oh yes, there are lots and lots, and I said I've been around for 100 years, but I haven't really that yet. But I was brought up through the use of Sami proverbs. Actually, my mother, I obviously was a kid who asked a lot of questions. So when my mother got tired of my questions, she used the proverb. And the funny thing is, I understood the words in the proverb, of course, but I didn't understand why she was giving me such a strange answer. But then I realized, well, this is end of communication for this time at least. But stories, of course, they represent a lot of wisdom and very constantly used in the upbringing, and not only as pastime activity, but really very intentionally to teach. There was a question back there.
Is the Sámi language unique, or does it have some relation to another language?
It is a Finno-Ugric language, but the Hungarian people don't like to be compared to Finnish and Sami, so they don't accept it as a Finno-Ugrian language, but it is actually.
So that means that North Sami, as I understand it, is similar to Finnish in some ways.
Well, all of the Sami languages actually,
but North Sami is the closest to
yes,
Finnish.
yes,
So in the Finno-Ugric, like Finnish would also be a Finno-Ugric language.
Yeah. Yes. You seem to have a question.
Basically wondering about these different dialects. When did they begin to differentiate from the main Sámi language? Or I think your answer kind of alludes to that already, so I'm not sure.
I think the main reason were the geographical distances, because they're like between the South Sami and the languages north of that. There's a huge mountain area in between. So over time they just developed in different directions, I guess.
So the ideas of the original language kind of, or came from Finland more, that spread around to.
Yeah. That's the linguists are still, and etymologists are still trying to find out where Sami actually came from. But one of the theories is actually that it was spoken all over Finland, but then the Finns in a way didn't want to be thought or regarded to be Sámi, and they aren't really, the genes aren't the same at all, so even though the languages are close to each other. So one of the theories, and actually a serious theory, is that the Finns just changed their language. So that's I find that quite amusing, that the majority wanted to change the language to not be like the minority.
I could buy that.
Yes.
Is it common in the Scandinavian and Nordic countries for people to have some Sámi heritage or to not know that they do, or is that changing now with more interest in it?
I didn't hear the question, so you can answer it.
Well, I'll just maybe repeat the question for you. She was asking if it's common for people in the Nordic countries to have Sámi heritage and lineage and just not know about it, or is it?
Oh yeah. Well, that requires a long answer, but the short version is that there are lots and lots of Sámi that haven't identify themselves as Sámi and don't see any need for doing that. So because assimilation actually succeeded for a lot of Sámi, and for a lot of those people, I feel, well, it's their freedom to choose not to be Sámi, and we shouldn't bother them about their background and the lineage at all. So, but of course there's a political side to this as well. So there are people who want to be recognized as Sámi in order to get into the Sámi parliament and be part of the way you what you do with the money that are allocated from the authorities to develop Sámi culture and Sámi livelihood. But it's really a complicated area. But definitely, if we use the definition that is now, that you can go back to your great-grandparents, and if one of them had Sámi as their first language, then you qualify as a Sámi, as long as you identify yourself as a Sámi. So that opens up for the Sámi to be like several 100,000 altogether, while we now are between 50 and 80,000. So, yeah. So.
Are there any Sámi sayings or phrases that are especially meaningful to you? And is there any Sámi slang that is interesting and that has kind of evolved over time?
Yeah. That's a good one. Yes, there are. Slang is actually, there isn't actually a specific Sámi slang, but that is very, it varies from place to place, and one small village, Karasjok, where the Norwegian Sámi parliament is placed, they have a tradition of using slang, or at least something that is comparable to slang. So yes, and among the young ones nowadays, there is a new language being invented. So maybe what we are experiencing nowadays with the young ones, in a way creating their own language, is something similar to what the Finns did when they wanted to get away from this.
You have a wonderful story in one of your papers about the usefulness of having certain locutions when you're dating, for example, or trying to, when a young woman is interested in a man and wants to know if her rival is also interested. Does this ring a bell?
It's so long since I told that.
Because, people got to get together, and you need to know whether a woman is also interested in the same guy, and so you tease her. There's a lot of teasing. And then, based on the reaction, you know whether you can pursue the same person. Maybe I misremembering it, but I thought that was a powerful example of the usefulness of having poetic language.
Oh yes, and that's also practiced in the Sámi joiking, the Sámi vocal genre that actually is is the background represents quite a lot of the background for Sámi poetry being so different from the Western poetry, because it is a development or that tradition. So really using circumlocutions, using metaphors, and also in testing out relationships, but also to test whether or not that person is related to you, because you would end up. so yeah, no, it's that's the usefulness of language. That's true. So it has a practical side to it as well. But you're younger. You can. Thank you for reminding me about that.
I'm very much impressed with your use of color. I wonder what you describe some of your influences in choosing the colors you use in your palette.
You know, when I was an exchange student in Finland in 1995, my art teacher taught Joseph Olber's color theory. And essentially what I learned from that is that any color can look different based on the relationship it has with other things. And so in a way it's kind of beautiful. It's a beautiful analogy to this relationality that we've been talking about. My colors, you know, when I work, I have a very clear plan up to a certain extent. So the way that I map in pencil, and then I have a colored pencil layer on the wood. And when I start applying the thread, that's when the plan goes out the window, and it's really just a responsive thing. So I usually use all of the colors at my disposal, and it's just about the pattern and the relationship between the thread and the threads next to it, or the color behind it. And I guess that's it's a responsive sort of thing, yeah.
Yeah, so the Sámi actually always have been very happy for the colors, even though you think of Samiland being covered by snow for most of the year, at least the way it used to be. But even in wintertime we had the colors of the northern lights, and the Sámi loved the spring because of the coming summer, of course, but also the fall, because you got all the fall colors. So ruski, and you have the same term in Finnish, ruska, actually is a specific term describing that colorful time of the year. So. And like this poet that I always return to, Nils-Aslak Valkeapää, he also said in an interview, he gave that he always put on, he didn't actually become a reindeer herder himself, but he helped his brother with herding the reindeer, and every time he went out to the herd, he put on his skakti, the Sámi outfit. And people asked him, well, why did you do that? Because the new clothing is much more practical for that reasons. And he said, no, but it's because the reindeer should have something beautiful to look at. Yeah, it was a great discussion because Synnøve Persson designed, or actually she was one of the designers of the new Sámi flag, and it was like the French tricolor more or less, but with the three Sámi colors. And but then this flag is designed by Astrid Baal. And she had that idea of the uniting the whole Sámi area, and then using the myth about the sun and also the moon, so connecting those two. But you're right. There were, because all the Nordic flags have the cross. There were people who said, "Well, no, this isn't correct. We are also Christians." So it's always been this fear of bringing back some of the old Sámi belief system, which of course never will happen. And I don't know if it's correct to speak about old Sámi religion at all, because that was part of it wasn't just religion, it was part of the whole belief system that you practice. But that obviously is a scaring thought for a lot of people, at least at that time in the 70s, 80s it was. I think that attitude is also changing now. But of course the flag was a new thing for the Sámi, so previously we didn't need anything like that. We had the language, we had the joik, we had the gakti that united us. But there is also, the flag has really been an important symbol and proven its own right.
Thank you to Harald and Tia very much for the interesting conversation and presentation. And I was just reminded that Tia is giving a workshop on Saturday, and there are 3 places left. So if you're interested in doing a geometry workshop with a lot of wonderful colors, please sign up. So thank you very much for coming tonight, and I hope we'll see you here again for some of the other programs related to Nordic Echoes.